Hey, 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 it's AAA Wednesday, which is my weekly Ask Alyssa Anything session where I'm popping into the comments and responding to questions you've left me about the publishing industry and writing a better book. I hope everyone's new year is off to an incredible start so far, whatever your goals may be for 2024. A couple of pieces of housekeeping before we get into the questions. Number one, it'll just take a second, but if you're enjoying my Q&As, please hit that thumbs up button right below the video here. It is a small thing that really helps out my channel a lot with the YouTube algorithm. And two, if you're new here, welcome. Please consider subscribing if you are an author interested in anything related to writing, publishing, fiction, and all that jazz. We would love to have you join our amazing community. In addition to these Q&As, I also do weekly deep dives into either an aspect of the publishing industry or some kind of tactical writing advice. Without further ado, let's dive into the first question today. Here is a question for one of your Q&A Wednesdays. How do you manage pacing? I've been using your self-eval form. I feel like I'm getting stronger in each area, but I have no idea about pacing. How can I gauge it myself, or is this something only feedback from an editor or a beta reader can help? Pace is something that can feel super nebulous and difficult to nail, because what we're actually talking about with pace is the reader's experience of the story. Do they feel that it is swiftly moving along, or do they feel that it's lagging in places? These areas can be challenging for you to see for yourself, but there are some strategies that you can use. First, I want you to pinpoint where in your manuscript your novel's inciting incident occurs. This is the moment at which things change meaningfully for your protagonist. Think of it as the first domino in a row of dominoes that kickstarts all the other chain of events happening. If this occurs quite deep in your novel, several chapters in, 50 pages or more into the book perhaps, then it might be worth considering if you can move it to happen earlier in the story. Because you might be having a pacing issue with the opening if it takes too long to reach the inciting incident. The reader will have the experience of sitting around and kind of waiting to see where the plot is heading. The inciting incident is really what kicks off your story, so you don't want to delay it too far. But in addition to identifying where your inciting incident takes place, I recommend doing an outline for yourself of what happens in each and every chapter of your story. This is going to really help you see which chapters are meaningfully progressing the plot forward and which might not be adding so much. For instance, do you have a chapter in there that's really just a deep flashback that we don't actually need? Or is there a chapter that shows a subplot that really isn't essential to the book, and focusing on that subplot is actually delaying the progression of the main plot that we are much more interested in? Doing this exercise where you write out literally what happens in each and every chapter, just a sentence or two for each is fine, will help you take a really critical look at your manuscript and see areas where the pace might be lagging because there isn't much plot development. As you mentioned, though, working with a professional editor or a beta reader or a critique partner can be immensely helpful in identifying areas that they felt were slow or areas where they just felt less engaged in the story. So if you're concerned about pace and you are able to work with someone, definitely ask them to point out those areas for you. If you've been enjoying my YouTube content, I have great news. There's more where that came from. I've been building out my newsletter website, chapter-break.com, to provide even more writing tips and insights directly to your inbox. I'm conducting interviews with literary agents and best-selling authors and doing deeper dives into specific editorial issues from my perspective as a developmental book editor myself. I would love for you all to check it out and let me know what you think. And as a freebie for signing up to my newsletter, you will get my story self-assessment worksheet. It's a resource I created to help you look at your manuscript more objectively and identify how you can improve it on the next draft. The links to grab the free story self-assessment worksheet and check out Chapter Break are in the description below. Here's the next question. I read on your homepage that historical fiction is in your zone of genius. I write historical fiction and wonder if you would recommend to write about well-known historical events or about less-known historical events. I do really love historical fiction. As for writing about well-known events or lesser-known events, my answer is really write about what compels you. There are examples of successful historical fiction that explore very well-known events. World War II, for instance, continues to be extremely popular in historical fiction. But there are also many authors who explore lesser known historical events that then become a whole area of interest because they have written about it. And authors are now learning and educating themselves through their story. A good story is a good story, whether it involves events we know very well as a culture or events that have been buried and we don't know much about. It's all about crafting a compelling narrative that engages your reader, and you can be successful going either way. We have time for one more question today. How many creative liberties can you take with stories based on true events? Let's say you are taking a family story and making a book about it. When is it a biography and when is it a novelization based off a true story? So when you're writing any type of narrative nonfiction, such as memoir, for instance, readers do understand that to some degree you are reconstructing a narrative, especially lines of dialogue that maybe weren't exactly how things were said. And that's expected within the genre. The reader understands that your intention is to convey events as close to reality as you can. I would say the same kind of technique goes for telling a family story of some kind. If your intention is to portray the events as close to accurately as possible, while reconstructing some elements to the best of your knowledge through research or speaking with family members, etc., then I would say that's still falling in the nonfiction realm. However, if you're using the story as a springboard for creating other characters or using it as inspiration for a premise or plot that then differs from what you understood to actually happen, that would be when it is becoming fiction that's inspired by true events. So think about what you are trying to convey with the story. Are you trying to give the reader this story exactly as it occurred? Or are you using the story as a springboard for a different type of story that you want to tell? Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions. And if you have something you'd like to ask me, drop it in the comments here and it will be added to my queue for my next Q&A session. Before you head out, don't forget to check out my newsletter website and grab your free story self-assessment worksheet. Those links are in the description below. Hit that thumbs up button if you're enjoying these Q&As, and don't forget to subscribe to join our amazing community. Thanks so much for watching and happy writing.